Welcome and good morning and afternoon to everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Taking Complexity Out of Data Science with Zoomdata and AWS. My name is Paul Sears, and I'm a solutions architect with AWS, and I work with partners primarily in the big data space. Today, I am joined by Russ Cosentino, who's co-founder and VP of Channels with Zoomdata, and by Jim McGinn, Senior Director of Cloud and Big Data Analytics at Blue Canopy, as well as Crystal Hare, Senior Manager at Blue Canopy. Today, we are going to have a brief overview of AWS Big Data Solutions, followed by an overview of Zoomdata, and then we will hear about Blue Canopy's success story using Zoomdata and AWS. Blue Canopy will talk about how they build a cloud-based data science workstation, and they will share some examples of how customers are benefiting from an on-demand data analytics tool. And you will have a chance to see the tool in action with a demo of the data science workstation. So how does AWS and Zoomdata bring you more value? So let's find out. The latest statistics show that data is growing at an ever-increasing rate. By 2020, 1.7 megabytes of data will be created each second for every person on the planet. This will result in a compound annual growth rate of 58% by the year 2020 for the Hadoop ecosystem. And while all this data is being created, less than 0.5% is even analyzed and used. And big data crosses all sectors. Companies that use their data well gain significant advantages over their competitors. For example, FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, has created a flexible platform that can adapt to changing market dynamics while providing its analysts with the tools to interactively query multi-petabyte data sets. FINRA moved about 90% of its data volumes to Amazon Web Services using AWS to capture, analyze, and store a daily influx of 38 billion records. With all this data, why use AWS instead of building your own big data platform? AWS services are immediately available with a rich set of capabilities. Your data is secure, and you can scale on AWS as your big data needs grow. And as shown by the statistics, your big data practice will need to scale. AWS has many ways to get your data in and stored, and many services that you can use to analyze that data. One common pattern is to take in streams of data from remote devices or sensors. You can build a data pipeline using Amazon Kinesis Firehose, for example, and stream that data into Amazon S3 for storage, and then analyze that data using Amazon EMR to make good decisions. AWS's Big Data Platform is the most comprehensive solution. For example, you can create petabyte scale repositories on Amazon S3, or you can analyze your clickstream data to make better business decisions. And now I will hand it over to Russ to talk about Zoomdata.
Thanks, Paul. So, Paul, you had an interesting stat there, and that's 1.7 megabytes of data per second per human by 2020. And the question I would ask the audience is, would your traditional BI infrastructure support that data at that scale? And when I say traditional, I mean when we have data stored in a data warehouse, where we make a copy of it and put it in some sort of proprietary reporting schema, and then we use some sort of desktop application to connect to that data and report on it. Now, will that type of infrastructure support the types of reporting that you need to do tomorrow? And the answer, more often than not, is no. And that's why when we started Zoomdata about 5 years ago, we really saw an opportunity to find a new standard for how people access, consume, and interact with data. So with the advent of these modern data stores, they created an opportunity for us to leverage things like interactive queries, and thereby pushing down the query to the database as opposed to moving the query to some sort of proprietary architecture, thereby allowing our customers, as we're highlighting here on the right-hand side, the ability to deploy solutions that can support their users in a modern BI infrastructure. And when I say support their users, when you look at these customers, they're typically dealing with hundreds of millions or billions or even hundreds of billions of data points. And what they're doing with Zoomdata is delivering reports and analytics to that user community all in a matter of seconds. Yes, a matter of seconds, not days, not hours, not minutes, not months. Within seconds, they can query these modern data stores and get results that fast. And not only do they get the results back super fast, it's delivered in a UI that's built for the business user. So what we're not doing is telling the business users to work with data scientists or data analysts to get access. We're empowering them to take advantage of the data and get the results that they need to see all in a matter of seconds. And this is all being accomplished by the fact that we've really built a very powerful technical ecosystem, and that includes the AWS stack, which Paul had highlighted to include many of the modern data stores like Redshift and EMR, but also working with partners like Cloudera and SAP and Matillion and Informatica on the transformation of data. Now, many times we have customers that want to just go to Marketplace and test Zoomdata, and they're more than welcome to do that. They can just go to Marketplace, type in Zoomdata, and spin up a Zoomdata server, and then connect and stream and visualize the data on a matter of seconds. And Chris will highlight that in her demonstration. But we also have other customers that are tackling big problems and sometimes want to work with integrators like we've listed here or many other ones to help solve those problems around big data, modern BI deployments. So when we think of some of today's challenges, we like to break it up into three big buckets. First is big data. Now, the fastest growing market in the data storage environment are these modern data stores like Redshift and Impala and Snowflake. Businesses are investing lots of money into these data storage environments because they support an interactive data experience. In other words, you can run queries against that data at scale with a high degree of concurrency and get the results back all in a matter of seconds. And the Zoomdata architecture is designed to take advantage of these interactive queries to deliver aggregated results back to the user all in a matter of seconds. See, that's kind of the secret sauce here. Instead of moving the data, we're taking the query to the data. The next thing is just the diversity of data. No longer are we storing data in these nice, neat tables. What we're doing is putting data into environments that are optimized for the type of data that we're storing. So whether it's search data, it might be in Solar, whether it's data that we want to do analytics on, it might want to store in Redshift. What's important is that a BI tool in the modern world is designed to connect to all these different data sources. And not only connect to that data, but also support capabilities like data fusion that allows you to bring the data together in a join at the application layer. And finally, there's real time. So now, gone are the days where we would wait till tomorrow to get our PDF report that showed all the data from yesterday. Our customers, especially the ones that we highlighted before, have become accustomed to getting real-time access to their data on demand. No longer are they waiting, they're able to tap into the data whenever they need. And finally, what I want to highlight is just the security benefits of a tool like Zoomdata. So in the past, what would happen is that people would move the data across the enterprise, and as that data moves from one location to another location, you start to lose custody of that data. Now, if you think about it, with Zoomdata, by taking the query to the data, what we're able to do is provide a much more secure infrastructure for our customers because the data is being stored in one location. And that's why we work with a lot of federal agencies and with a lot of banking institutions because they're concerned about the data and its integrity. And by using a tool like Zoomdata, we're able to help them assure that they can invest a lot in the infrastructure around the data to secure it, as opposed to having to not only look at that, but also looking at the security around the BI tools and every other tool that might be touching the data. So the question to the audience again is that if you're spending all this money on moving to a modern data storage environment, why would you use a traditional BI tool that would move the data out of that storage environment, put it into a proprietary reporting tool, and then deliver reports over a desktop? It seems like, and many of our customers have realized, that not only do we do the investment on the new modern data store, but we also have to invest in the modern BI platform as well. So how does that all come together? Well, first off, we've got the data types. And data is being generated all over the world. And again, like Paul said, 1.7 megabytes per second pretty soon. And that data is going to be coming into systems like AWS via streaming or just being uploaded. It might be structured or unstructured. And what's important is that any BI tool that you select really is agnostic into the type of data that you're going to work with. You have to support all those different data types in a modern BI tool. And when that data lands, it might land in Redshift or Amazon or RDS or EMR. What's important is that the BI tool has smart connectors that can connect to all those different data sources. And I say connect from the standpoint, not just the data pull using a dumb JDBC connector. I mean that we have an intelligent connector that's optimized for the data stored in that environment. So for instance, if we connect to Solar using a smart connector, not only do we connect unstructured search in that connection, we support features like nesting and facets so that when we support those features, those results persist into our interface for the user so that they get the full benefit of the capabilities of that data store as opposed to the reporting tool just pulling data out. So we're that conduit that really highlights that investment in those data stores to the business user. And that's important to note when you look at the smart connectors in the tool, in the modern BI tool. The next thing that comes to mind, too, is just calculations. Where do calculations occur in the modern BI platform? Well, they can occur at two levels. One is at the application level, where we can manipulate aggregated values and present those to the user. But also, we need to provide support at the row level so that we can do row-level calculations for the user as well. The next thing that's important is having an open framework for users to interact with Zoomdata or any BI tool. And that's where the Open API framework comes in with a tool like Zoomdata. So if you wanted to build an embedded application that is completely branded as your tool and use APIs just to call data and populate your own JavaScript visualizations, go right ahead. If you want to use the standard Zoomdata UI and use our standard interface, you can use that as well. But what's important is that a tool, a modern BI tool, can look at or can help the customer to just do standard reporting, but also in the future we realize that analytics is everywhere and part of applications that businesses are building, and that Zoomdata can embed its results into any of those applications. Now Fusion, I can't say enough about Fusion. Fusion is a really important part of our application because what we know is that we have customers that might have new modern data stores that are being populated every second with data, but they may have some lookup or proprietary or older data sitting in a traditional data store. And with Zoomdata Fusion, you can bring both of those sources together in a single view for the customer. And of course, security, boy, that's important as well. And whether we're talking about Kerberos or LDAP or SAML, Zoomdata embeds all those security features within the application and can also persist security parameters from the data store directly into the Zoomdata interface as well. And also within the Zoomdata interface, we have the concept of user and groups so that we can manage filtered values against particular users and individuals within the application. So those are just some of the key features embedded in the Zoomdata server. There's a lot more, but these are some of the ones that pop up the most. But at the end of the day, it really revolves around the user, and it revolves around helping the user get business value out of the Zoomdata, out of your data. And we are not installing a desktop application onto the user's device. What they're doing is integrating the Zoomdata via the web browser, all through HTML5 interface and with visualizations that are based on JavaScript. So not only can you use our standard out-of-the-box visualizations, but you can also create your own JavaScript visualizations and incorporate those into the Zoomdata UI. So that's kind of what the new modern BI stack looks like. And what you can see, the big difference is that when we're coming from the data store to Zoomdata, there's not a step in between where we're copying the data into some sort of redundant proprietary data store. We're connected directly to the data store and running queries against that. So I'll just wrap it up with this and talking a little bit about Zoomdata in action. So this is a highlight of the Zoomdata interface. And really, it's an experience that's designed for real-time and historical replay. At the bottom of the bar, when Crystal jumps into her demo, you'll see that there's a time bar that you have the ability to manipulate. You can pause, rewind, and fast-forward data. And think about it. Running analytics, being able to pause data and then seamlessly go back in time and look at the data from another period. You know, these are capabilities that are patented within Zoomdata that we're able to provide our users. We are also able to embed dashboarding capabilities within Zoomdata so that business users can create and manipulate their own dashboards, save them, and share them with others without having to talk to an engineer to build their own dashboard. So really, the business value for the business user is incredible. And then when you look at the UI itself, when we started the company, we were really inspired by Apple and Google and the user experience that they created around touch and ease of use. And we've worked hard to incorporate some of those values into our application. So thank you so much for sharing or listening to us talk a little about the Zoomdata application. Now let's turn it over to Crystal and talk a little bit about the demonstration.
Thanks, Russ. This is Jim again, and thanks for having us on the webinar. I want to talk about Blue Canopy. We're a mid-size IT and cybersecurity company recently acquired by Jacobs a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to talk about how we built what we call a data science workstation in the cloud. Next. As we work through our various different customers in the federal and the commercial sector and the intel community and the financial services organization, many of the customers were looking for a solution that allowed them to push the data in, give them an easy-to-read management level views, and to summarize various different complex trends while doing analytic research. The solution we came up with was an AWS-based, what we call a data science workstation. It's got Zoomdata visual analytics on top of it, and it's an on-demand virtual desktop with high-performance compute scalability that puts the power of the analytics into the hands of the users and sits within the Amazon Web Services infrastructure. A little bit more business background. We talked about some of our customers, and many of the customers that we worked with, many of the mission users were data scientists and analytic users. In many of the agencies, we saw a common theme emerge. They wanted access to compute, to storage, and the various different analytic tools. They wanted it on demand. So we created and implemented a high-performance compute cluster called the Data Science Workstation, which Crystal will walk you through a demo, and we deployed that in the AWS East for some of our financial services customers. The common theme, again, was to be able to respond to the analytic demands of various different organizations on demand. The other common theme that we saw was that the analysts wanted the tools to quickly respond, and they wanted the data that was fit for use. They wanted to have the compute, the storage, and the tool sets in various different configurations, and so we created multiple different sizes of a data science workstation. A small, a medium, a large, an extra large, and what we call a custom configuration. We understood that there wasn't one size that fits all for each one of these circumstances. Historically, there was a lengthy acquisition process as we went through and tried to provision servers on-premise and various different analytic tools. With the power of AWS and Zoomdata, we're now able to provision these data science workstations on demand. If they're left idle, we can turn them off. We can let them run for several weeks or days at a time, and we're only paying for what we use. This is a screenshot of the user experience that we developed with the Amazon Web Services platform and Zoomdata, and now I'm going to turn it over to Crystal, who's going to run you through a very quick demonstration.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Move this out of the way. So the first thing that starts with our data science workstation is it has to be on demand. What we did is actually built a custom workflow. So while it's on demand, you still need to be able to approve the purpose of the data science workstation and the finances that go along with it, and also to make sure that whatever anybody's putting into the system is actually going to work with the script. So what we did was create a process by which you could customize your order form. Someone could come in, literally, as something's happening, come in and say, I need on-demand compute, I need analytics space, I need everything connected to the data, and I need to be able to get in and do analytics right now. So this is completely customizable, but you can go in, enter your username, because everything that is spun up with the Active Directory or whatever role-based access control that you currently have, so everything's single sign-on. We also have, the variety of operating systems, instance types. So again, we saw small, medium, large, and extra large. You could always customize this as well. The daily usage schedule. So as Jim was mentioning, we can turn things on and off on a scheduled time. So you're only paying for what time you're actually using it. If you're not doing 24-hour analytics, you're only using it during business hours, then we only pay for business hours. You can select your data drive size. So if you need something actually native to the desktop, you can put something there. You can also select data sets that you need access to. So once this is submitted, there's a background process that runs to actually deploy the data science workstation, which looks a little bit like this. So this is, if everybody's familiar with AWS, running in AWS. It's currently a C3X large. And it comes provisioned to your username. So everything that you have access to, it uses your AWS IAM role. So whatever data sets you have access to through your IAM role, this machine will also have access to. Whatever you don't have access to, it won't have access to. So again, this can be completely customized with the different data development tools that people use. We've got things like Databricks, Jupyter Notebook, a lot of things where people want to do actual Python scripts. And of course, we have Zoomdata. So one thing we had put together, so taking in light recent events, if you needed to go on and figure out, okay, what are people talking about? What is happening on social media? So this we put together and actually connects live to Twitter and sees what people are talking about. So all the words related to specific hashtags about Vegas and Mandalay Bay and the shooting and the shooter's name. And you can start to see, what are people talking about in relationship to those things. You can also easily see on a map where these things are happening. Where are people actually doing these mentions So where are these people physically located? So you can start to look at analytics in that way. You can also start to see the volume. How many times in relation to this are people talking about other things? So you can also start to see, what is the relationship between Las Vegas and Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas and the shooting, and start to actually see kind of what are people talking about and instantly get a sense of the analytics. Again, this is all live, as we talked about before. This is all on DVR, so you can move this forward or backward depending on where you are and what you're looking for. So again, you could also pull something like a Databricks up and connect directly to the data sources that you're looking for. As far as that, so I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Thanks, Crystal. Great demo. We hope that gave you a little bit of flavor of some of the things that we've done with the Data Science Workstation. So some of the potential applications that we've seen, much of our business was focused on the U.S. intelligence community. So organizations like SOCOM, CENTCOM, DoD, and various different intelligence agencies. And the common theme we saw there was Intel analysts, Ops Center analysts, and data scientists were trying to react and crunch large volumes of data after an event. Crystal walked you through how quickly we were able to adapt and do analytics on the Las Vegas shooting. This is usually a monthly occurrence. We also have a separate version of the Data Science Workstation that can be deployed to the classified version of AWS, which is called C2S. We work with customers in the financial intelligence community, and they have quantitative analysts, or quants, and they were running various different algorithms and predictive models, and they were trying to analyze data on terabytes and petabytes of data. Using the Data Science Workstation and the tools that we provisioned on there, like Zoomdata, gives them quick access to the various different analytics. The other thing you can do with the Data Science Workstation is run it as a strict virtual desktop, VDI. You could deploy Amazon Workspaces or AWS Workmail and use this as a desktop for various different needs within your enterprise. We've learned a couple lessons, and we want to give you guys a couple of key considerations and design points for success. As Russ mentioned earlier, one of the reasons they founded Zoomdata was around a critical and an excellent user experience. We designed the Data Science Workstation with the same goal in mind. Always plan around an excellent user experience. It doesn't matter how good a tool is. If the users aren't happy and it's not easy to use, they're not going to use it. Another key point is understanding the limitations of the storage and the compute power that's contained within AWS. The Data Science Workstation can be configured on various different EC2 types, everything from G series to X1 series to what Crystal talked about. She had it currently running on a C3. Another key point is building security in from day one into your virtual desktop. One of the other things that resides underneath the covers on the Data Science Workstation is the notion of Splunk forwarders. So every time the Data Science Workstation is turned on, the Splunk forwarders are turned on, and they are instantly collecting all the audit data of all the activities that are taking place on that server. Everything is then fed down into our Security Operations Center, where we have a holistic cybersecurity picture. Another point is to design with scale in mind. You don't need to start with this on an X1. You can start with a T1 micro or various different sizes of EC2s. The goal is to design with scale in mind. And the last point is to plan around the various different user groups, the user types, the user experience in your business. We want to be able to deploy this in an agile manner. We want to gain user adoption as we progress, and we want to be able to configure this for the various different parts of the business. Just I think a great quote here from Gardner on desktop virtualization within the marketplace. I think desktop virtualization is one of the key goals to building a foundational digital workplace. According to Gartner, they're seeing 20% of mid-sized enterprises already running VDI, with about another 20% more in evaluation. I think we're seeing the shift for many organizations, both in the federal and the commercial sector, as well as larger enterprises, to various different virtual desktop solutions. This is an architecture here with some of the benefits and the key features that we walked through, and I'll just highlight a couple of these again. In the top right of the architecture, you'll see the various different sizes that we configured this on. So a small for us was deployed on a C3, a medium was on a C4, we had a large on an R3, and an extra large running on the X1 instances. Everything runs with various different Amazon Machine Images, or AMIs, and that is the secure underlying operating system that we created and deployed. Various different tools that could be deployed on here. Again, currently running it with Zoomdata and Databricks. The visualization services are all provided by Zoomdata, and the data is stored in the various different aspects of AWS. So really the results that we've seen is our analysts can have a temporary workspace with the tools to perform a single task over the matter of a couple hours, or to perform long-term various different analytics platforms. They can begin the processing in a matter of minutes. As Crystal walked you through that form, once the user submits the request form, we provision everything with DevOps using a tool called Chef. It takes a matter of minutes. The user gets their username and password, and they are off and running on their analytics. It can be shut down in the evening. It can be shut down on the weekend in order to save money and lower the costs. It's able to quickly produce results and solve problems. This is a game changer because what we're able to do is quickly react to giving the analyst the power of the compute and the storage and the analytic tools of AWS and Zoomdata to give the users the data science they need. I'll turn it back over to Russ.
Thanks, Jim. And Crystal, thanks for the great presentation. Before I wrap this up, I just want to highlight that Blue Canopy was our first customer on the AWS Marketplace. And for us, it was just an amazing story where they were working with a customer, and the customer wanted to see what they could do with visual analytics on Redshift. And they just went to the AWS Marketplace, and they searched on visual analytics, discovered Zoomdata, went ahead and spun up a Zoomdata server and connected to Redshift all in about 15 minutes. And I think that highlights just the power of AWS and Zoomdata coming together to help businesses like Blue Canopy deliver things like a data scientist workshop. We can't say enough about how easy, and I think everyone here can vouch for how easy it is to use AWS and how flexible and cost-effective it is. It's always working, and it definitely scales to the performance that our customers are asking for. And again, our customers are dealing with hundreds of millions or billions or hundreds of billions of data points, and it's secure. With Zoomdata, we really like to stress the fact that we are the fastest visual analytics for big data. And for us, that has a lot of meaning because our customers are in the big data space, and they're looking for new ways to solve these new problems that they have. And they look to Zoomdata to really deliver an interactive experience against these data sources all in a matter of seconds. Our success is really driven by the fact that businesses are rapidly adopting modern data stores. And whether, again, it's a Redshift or a Snowflake or a Cloudera, investments are being made in these modern data stores. And customers are then saying, if I'm going to put my data here, the old ways of reporting on data just aren't going to work. I need to move to a modern BI tool such as Zoomdata. Being designed for business users is also incredibly important too. I mean, think back to those desktop applications where you'd have an army of engineers and data analysts who were building custom reports on some sort of desktop UI. What we've done is really eliminated a lot of those activities by the fact that business users can connect directly to the data. We really are big fans of wide long table with many attributes and metrics, and then those users can create their own visuals and dashboards on top of those data sources without having to hire an army of support staff to build out those reports. Streaming architecture is really incredibly important as well. So the fact that we're just taking the query to the data bypasses that whole batch model that kind of exists with a traditional BI tool. The fact that a traditional BI tool would suck the data out on a scheduled basis and make it available for reporting no longer exists with a modern BI tool such as Zoomdata. Every time there's an update to the data source, say in Redshift, then Zoomdata is immediately updated as well. And finally, we actually pride ourselves on how easy it is to connect, stream, and visualize data from a data source. We're big fans of ease of use and making it a really compelling experience for the business user. So those are some of the things I want to conclude with. I think we'll turn it back over to Paul.
Thank you, Jim and Crystal and Russ, for that insightful discussion about the Data Science Workstation. As for next steps, you can learn more about Blue Canopy, Zoomdata, and AWS by following the links listed below. So we have one question right here, and it is, so actually I'll have Blue Canopy talk about this. Can you talk about connecting your Data Science Workstation with existing company data resources?
Certainly. So The way we've done this is actually be able to connect the Data Science Workstation using the VPC and the way AWS natively connects to data sources. So we have a lot of data sources in S3. You could have data sources live in Twitter, another Redshift database, but you could also have stuff that's on-prem. AWS is very well adapted to connect directly to those on-prem data sources using either Direct Connect or a VPN. And you can generate that all within Zoomdata. So one thing we did was easily connect to Twitter. It takes about 5 minutes to set it up. You can connect to a lot of the data sources as long as you know what the structure is. As far as the Data Science Workstation, everything that's connected to the Data Science Workstation is done based on the IAM role that's assigned to that user. We actually have been able to generate all of the IAM roles based on directly connecting to, say, something like Microsoft Active Directory. We've used a tool called Centrify that will actually allow you to connect directly to your AD and to also propagate those groups and those privileges from your AD domain throughout the rest of the connection. So that's how we typically connect to data sources. Again, it can be configured based on your environment. That's something that we always go first, is kind of make sure that we solve the problem that the customer's asking and not just trying to sell them a solution.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Another question came in around the moving data to the cloud from, I guess, the S3 buckets and moving from on-prem to S3. Does Zoomdata or Blue Canopy help out with that, or is that something that they would do with AWS?
Yeah, so I can take this from a Zoomdata perspective and how we connect to S3. I mean, S3 is an incredibly important source. Many people are just storing data in there, and then sometimes they'll use a tool like Snowflake to query the data, and Zoomdata has connectors into Snowflake so we can access the data there. Another option is they may use a tool like Athena and to run queries against the data, and Zoomdata supports Athena. They may also want to use a Presto connector from Zoomdata to connect to S3, and we can do that. And the final option is that Zoomdata has a capability where we can cache data from S3 directly into our application and run queries against that. Now that data can be stored in Spark or in a Postgres database that Zoomdata manages. So there's basically 4 major ways for Zoomdata to connect to S3. One is through a data storage environment like Snowflake. Another is through our connectors, whether it's Athena or Presto. And third is to move a copy of the data into the Zoomdata server for reporting and analytics.
Okay, thank you, Russ. Another question I think for you would be from the attendees was, will the Zoomdata server become a bottleneck as it becomes the conduit for all the data?
Well, that's a good question, and one of my favorites too, is with Zoomdata, we take the query to the data, is what we like to say. So all the heavy lifting is being managed by that data environment. So the important thing is to make sure that you have a robust Redshift environment or Cloud Air environment for your data. And then what happens is Zoomdata just basically runs queries against that data source, and we just get those aggregated results sent back to our environment. So we're not moving the data. We're not saying, hey, send us the 10,000 records that we need to process. All we do is get maybe a count of sales by state, and that could be 3 digits, and that's what we're going to persist to the user in our user experience. Now, sometimes the bottleneck for us would be the number of users that are hitting Zoomdata, and that's because we're executing so many queries that we would want to have more boxes to help more user load, but that's not because we're managing or running into problems with the queries themselves that are occurring on the data side of the equation.
Okay, so there's a question here I think is really more for me to answer for AWS. It's asking around, is there any real-time streaming from on-premises to S3, especially log files instead of databases? And I'll go ahead and answer this one. We have many ways you can move your data into Amazon S3. If you do want to stream data, one option is to use something like Amazon Kinesis Firehose, which can actually stream data directly into S3. If you're looking at log file data, there are a number of solutions out there. We have partner solutions such as Splunk or Datadog that can take your logs and store them into their system and do analytics, as well as you have the ability of even doing like Logstash and having the logs sent up to S3 via an upload feature. Just basically has S3 as an endpoint to those uploads. So you have the ability to move your log files or your streaming data onto S3 as you need to. Another question we have here is, how do you differentiate Zoomdata from other products, say Tableau? I think this is for you, Russ.
Yeah, so I think I'll take it. This is Russ. So Tableau it's really a great product. It's been in the market for a long time and has a huge installed base. But their focus really is on more smaller data sets. Tableau does a great job if you have less than 1 million data points. If you're looking at processing hundreds of millions or billions of data points, that architecture really falls apart, primarily because it's moving that data into its proprietary schema and then reporting on it, sometimes on a desktop or an environment that really isn't optimized to support huge data volumes at scale. So many times what happens is our customers will deploy Redshift, and then they'll connect Tableau to it, and then they'll start trying to look at big data at it through Tableau, and it doesn't work. And then they give us a call, and then able to see how quickly they can connect, stream, and visualize that data at scale, and that's where we really shine. So Tableau is great for a ton of features and a really, a great product, but it's designed for a different use case, and that's smaller data sets, not for big data.
Okay, thank you for that. So talking more about Zoomdata, how is Zoomdata priced out on the AWS marketplace?
So on the AWS marketplace, Zoomdata is based on a consumption model. So users can go ahead and spin up a Zoomdata instance on demand, and based on the size of the instance that they purchase, there's an hourly rate for the Zoomdata server. And as Jim was mentioning, you have the ability to turn it off on weekends to save costs and turn it back on during the weekdays, and you would incur costs for every hour that it's up and running.
Okay, I see. So consumption-based model. So how many different data sources can Zoomdata connect to?
So out of the box, Zoomdata comes with over 30 standard connectors. And again, it's the whole AWS suite from RDS to EMR to S3 to Redshift. But then we also work with partners like the Cloudera suite and the MapR suite and SAP and Teradata and Hortonworks. The list goes on and on and on, because it's important to us to give our customers access to any data they might want to keep in their environment. But we also provide an enterprise data connector suite, which also allows our customers to build custom connectors to any data sources that we may not have already built a data connector for. So really, we haven't really run into an environment where we can't connect to a data environment that a customer has, because we can always find a way to connect to those data sources using the EDC.
Great. So more about Zoomdata. Can you create customer visualizations with Zoomdata? Or I guess custom visualizations? Yes.
Yeah. So Zoomdata visualizations are based on JavaScript. So anyone can go ahead and create a custom visualization, make it available through the Zoomdata visualization interface, and then that becomes a visualization that will be presented to the user. So that if you find something on D3 that you like, you're more than welcome to paste it into our Visualization Studio, and then that will connect it to the data in Zoomdata, and then that source will then start presenting data in your own environment. If you don't want to create your own original one, you have you have the ability also to customize existing Zoomdata visualizations to meet your needs as well.
So another question for Zoomdata is, how does Zoomdata work with technology such as R? Say from data scientists or analysts who are using R to perform complex calculations? Yeah,
so machine learning, statistics, tools like R, data science workbenches, AI. When we look at the stack, we look at them now as performing a role of transforming data and then delivering results somewhere for Zoomdata to connect to. So we love it when we have partners that are using R, maybe on top of some data sitting in Redshift. The output then is landed somewhere, and then Zoomdata connects to it. And because Zoomdata supports real-time streaming, if we're streaming data using, say, Spark Stream, and we're doing some sort of transformation, and it lands in Redshift, Zoomdata's data DVR can continuously deliver updates of that data directly to the user as well. So we look at that as a spot in the continuum of data flow from, say, the source to the to Redshift as being a transformation that goes on, and then we connect to the data after it's been transformed.
Another question around Zoomdata, and in this case around AWS products. So how does Zoomdata differ from other AWS products, like I guess they're talking about Elasticsearch or our managed search service with Kibana, but how do you integrate? How do you compare with the open source tools in this space?
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at something like Kibana, It's great for log data, but it's kind of a one-dimensional tool where it's really optimized for Elasticsearch. With Zoomdata, we have a Elastic connector and a Solar connector, and like we said, another 30 plus connectors embedded in the application. So we can support all the different sources through one UI. The other thing to mention with Zoomdata is that it's a tool that really has a personality that's been influenced by our business customers, and that it's really designed separate from the open source community. It's really driven by what our customers' needs are, and we've built a really secure infrastructure and added in features that aren't one-to-one match with Kibana, because it's more tied to what the business community is asking us to build.
Okay, I think, so earlier you mentioned about the different ways of connecting to different data sources. So, and you have what's called smart connectors. What makes Zoomdata connectors smart connectors?
So let's say that we're going to connect to a Elastic database. And with Elastic, you have unstructured text, you have nesting, you have facets, all capabilities built within the database. Now, a traditional, what we call dumb connector, would just basically query Elastic and just get the results and just say, give me a count of states. With the Zoomdata Smart Connector, what we're able to do is also do unstructured text search on Elastic. So if I wanted to search for all the stores that start with the letter Y, that we could query Elasticsearch and get those results. We could also leverage the facets capabilities within Elastic as well and count the occurrences of the letter Y within that data source. Or we could also have a nested database, and we could work with that structure as well. And so instead of just querying for a structured result, Zoomdata is saying, look, there's these capabilities in Elasticsearch that we want to persist from the database to the user, and Zoomdata does that through our smart connectors.
Great. We have a few questions remaining. One of them is, does Zoomdata support embedding?
Yes. So we kind of think, kind of one of our visions when we started the company is that in the future, analytics is just going to be a part of an application and not a separate location for analysis. In other words, right now, many times when people want to do analysis, they'll just open up, say, Tableau, and they'll do analysis outside of their normal work applications. In Zoomdata, what we want to do is make available our tools within any application that becomes an embedded component of what you deliver to your customer. So customers may be looking at 5 or 6 analytic visualizations along with other data availability from other systems all in one UI as opposed to going to different UIs. So our API framework, which is really robust, supports the embedding of Zoomdata into those applications. Whether you're looking at a standard Zoomdata visualization, or maybe you have your own visualization, but you want to extract data from the Zoomdata API to use to populate your visualization, we can even support that.
Thank you again, Russ. So I guess the final question we have is, does Zoomdata include a free trial?
Yes, on AWS, when you spin up the Zoomdata instance, a 30-day free trial starts. It does not include the cost of the AWS hardware, but it does include the Zoomdata software free for 30 days. But if you contact us, we can provide a $500 credit as well, so that can offset some of the costs of the of the AWS cost during that 30-day free trial.
Okay, great for that information. I think that's all the questions that have been submitted. So I think that's all the questions we have. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this webinar now. I thank you everybody for attending, and we really hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.